Going to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon and welcome everybody. This session today is on starting a nonprofit. I hope that's what you had in mind. But before we get started with that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about SCORE. We are the largest network of free volunteer small business mentors in the country. And we have mentors who can help you no matter what stage your business is, whether you're thinking about starting a business, actually starting, growing, or even wanting to retire or sell your business. So it's very simple to request a mentor. You can go to our website and find someone very easily. Our mission is to foster vibrant small business communities. We do this through mentoring and education. We hope that you, as a small business owner, will have all the resources you need to be successful. We do know that small businesses drive our national economy, and certainly in the Cleveland area, if you've been downtown, in the last few years, you've seen a regrowth with many new small businesses. So that's a major thing for our community, and we're certainly happy that you're interested in starting a business. These are some of the statistics for last year. For our entire nation, we've helped about 60,000 new businesses. You can see about 85 non-owner jobs created and about 143 total jobs created. We are a nonprofit organization, so like other nonprofits, we're supported by grants, and we're all volunteers. There are about 10,000 of us. But recently we've lost some of our core funding, but we are committed to continuing to provide free webinars. So here is a snapshot of our website. If you go here, you can click on this and find a mentor. You can actually view the local web mentors and their profiles and choose your own mentor, or you can ask us to match you with a mentor. You can also see what workshops are coming up, and you can also access a lot of templates, like a business plan template, a financial or marketing plan. There are articles on a number of topics. So when you have a chance, you might want to just go and browse and see what is there that will be helpful to you. Again, we do get some funding through the Small Business Administration, and we also get funding from a lot of these community partners, and we certainly extend our gratitude to them for being supportive of small businesses. So if you like what you find today, we hope that you might consider a small donation to help us keep going. This link will take you to our website. And this will also take you to our website. And I'm going to stop sharing, and delighted to introduce David Holmes, who's the Regional Education Manager for Candid, and also the authority on nonprofits. So we're happy to have him here. And David, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Anita. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to share my slides here. This is our starting a nonprofit class, and my name is Dave Holmes, as Anita mentioned. I am the Educational Programming Manager at Candid. That's my email address on that slide. And by the way, you'll get a copy of all these slides after the presentation, so you can use them. But I set up specific appointments for people that are working to fund their nonprofits, and I'm happy to set up appointments with you and work with you. I've done worked for Candid for about 20 years total. I did worked about 9 years initially with when it was the Foundation Center. A few years ago, we combined with GuideStar to become Candid. And what we really try to do is collect information and provide information about the nonprofit world. So, how to start a nonprofit, how to run a nonprofit, how to fundraise for it, and how to promote it, how to get the word out there to potential funders. We collect information, statistics, and details, and we publish reports on the nonprofit world. And we do lots and lots of trainings related to writing grant proposals and budgeting and working with your board of directors and putting a fundraising plan together, all the things that are required to keep an organization going. We're headquartered in New York City. We have regional offices across the country, including one in Cleveland. And then we also have partners. We have actually it's now closer to 2,000 partners throughout the United States at different locations in the United States and Mexico where you can go and use our resources for free. We have a tool called Foundation Directory, which is a way to look up potential grant opportunities. And it is freely available at all of those 1,600 plus locations. And there's a little link there where you can find us. Most likely there is one in your city or not too far away from where you are. What I'm going to talk about today is going to be more about the startup information. And I am hoping that you will be able to get this kind of information in a way that's easy to understand. We're going to go through some of the steps that you need to go through. I'm not a lawyer or an accountant, so I'm not going to be able to do that hands-on kind of stuff, but that's what SCORE is for, working with them to talk to you about putting your plan together. I'm going to talk about the legal steps, but I'm also going to talk about the other steps that you need to think about when you're creating a nonprofit organization and some of the alternatives. If you decide you don't want to go forward with it right now, what else can you do? And throughout this, I'll be mentioning different resources, showing you a couple of them, and taking you to our website where there are lots of great resources related to starting a nonprofit. So if you have questions, please do put them in the chat, and I'll make sure at the end that I go back and review them. I might stop and take a look at them at different times as we go on to make sure that you get your questions answered. So, what is a nonprofit organization? Well, those of you who are already started one or you're in the process, you understand what this is. The definition, according to the IRS, who basically administers nonprofits through the United States. If you want to be a public charity, otherwise known as a 501c3, which is the nonprofit status of the United States, that's what the IRS overseas. And eventually, if you're going to become a formal national nonprofit, you are going to apply through the IRS. IRS defines it as you are set up to do charitable things, one or more charitable purposes, and they have a long list of what makes a charity, but you probably already know what all those are. Arts, education, health, human services, youth development, environment, anything that's related to benefiting other people and benefiting something outside of the employees. It's not supposed to benefit private individuals or shareholders. It's not like a business where everybody gets a share if the business is doing well. It's not supposed to be benefiting private interests of any time, nor is it supposed to influence legislation as a substantial part of its activities. Now, you can start a nonprofit and you can advocate for certain issues, things that you are in favor of, as long as you are not lobbying or saying vote for this person and doing that kind of information. And the IRS has lots of detailed information. I'm going to show you their website in just a second. And it's a little bit of a maze to get to the IRS website and get information, but I'll show you a good place that you can go to get all the definitions of what you need and to get the process from them. There is a process for getting that 501c3 public charity status with the IRS. So you can consider yourself a nonprofit and you have a little letter, the 501c3 letter that says that you are a nonprofit organization. It's not a one-step process, and this is a very like dense slide here because there are a lot of things that you have to do to go this far. But the first thing that you have to do is set yourself up as a nonprofit. And that means establishing a board of directors, having people that are going to be running the organization and registering at first with the state that you're in. So if you're in the state of Ohio, you incorporate with the Secretary of State's office. And they have a wonderful, pretty simple document that teaches you what you need to do to incorporate in Ohio. Costs, I think it's $99 to do this. And what you need to do beforehand is to establish a board of directors of at least 3 people who are going to be running the organization. Now, that one of those people can be you, but the important part is that you are a public charity. You're publicly represented, and the people that own your nonprofit, your public charity, are at least 2 of them are not going to be you, and more likely it's going to be quite a number of other people that are going to be in charge of your organization. We'll talk more about that as we go on. You set it up with some basic bylaws, which are just the rules of how the nonprofit works and how the meetings happen and what you do, and some board policies. And you file incorporation, articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State. So you fill out this, and I'm going to say that this is not the most difficult part of it, is those first 3 steps. It's getting your sort of your ideas organized. But it is something where if you can get help and get some structure, and that means structure from an organization like SCORE that can give you some mentoring as you go through this, or from a lawyer, either offered pro bono for free or somebody that you know that can help you use legal language, because these are legal forms that you're going to be submitting, that might help you out a lot. And I'll probably mention more about that as we go on and look at some of the resources we have. But what you do when you file with the state, in this case, the state of Ohio, you become incorporated as a nonprofit business. You get an employer identification number from the IRS then, once you have done that. And there's a form that you fill out and submit for that. And then you file for federal tax exemption. So filing with the state and becoming a tax exempt public charity in the state of Ohio is the first step. The next step is to go and then do this on a national level. And you fill out a form 1023. And there are different sizes of forms, different lengths of forms for different sizes of nonprofits. And if you are over a certain size, you may have to use the basic form 1023. If you're a smaller nonprofit going to be working at a very small level, you might be able to file a form 1023 EZ. But this is essentially where you submit the information. Now, that's a very, very brief description of what you need to do. And I'm going to show you a place where you can find lots of other good information related to this. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to share my screen where I go to the internet. I will share you Candid's website in just a little bit, but I'm going to start by sharing the IRS's website. Now, the IRS's website, as I said, is very complicated. There's a lot of forms on there, a lot of unfamiliar stuff, and you can get really easily lost. But here's a section that I recommend that you look at. So this is irs.gov you would go to. Once you go to irs.gov, I encourage you to search this phrase, life cycle of a public charity. I'm going to put it in the search bar for irs.gov and bring this up again. That's going to be the first hit, life cycle of a public charity. And when you click on it, the nice thing about this is it tells you what you need to do through the whole process, from starting out, including what you need to get organized, what you need to do for different states, how you get your employee identification number, and how you register for charitable solicitation. If you're going to be fundraising in a particular state, you need to be okayed. You need to register with that state. All of these are all in one place here in this life cycle of a public charity. It takes you through the starting out, it takes you through the next steps, which are applying to the IRS for your tax exempt status. There's a publication that you can download. And the reason why this is really helpful is that the numbers of these publications don't really make any sense and they don't have any relation to the order that you do anything. So it's really nice to be able to see everything laid out, including what are the costs, what's the processing, what's going to happen during this process. It explains everything. And then after that, after you apply for the IRS and get your tax exempt status, it also has information about what you need to file regularly. And we'll mention this again, but the element that makes it sometimes challenging when you're starting a nonprofit is that you do have to do regular reporting and reporting to the federal government, reporting to different agencies. It tells you what you need to file. It gives you the links to the forms, and it tells you about ongoing compliance, meaning I've started this, I've gone through all this trouble of starting a nonprofit and establishing it. How do I make sure that I'm doing it right? And this is a lot to read through. There's a lot of links here, but it's very, very good to know what's necessary. And you wouldn't necessarily look at all these and read them all at the first that you looked at it, but it's nice to be able to go back to this life cycle of a public charity and follow through. So this is one of the best resources I can find that will tell you through what you need to do for all of these different parts. I will go back and talk about something that Candid does that will help you out. And I'll do that a little bit later on, but I do want to make sure that you know about this. So I'm going to stop sharing this and go back to the slides here. If you have any questions, please do submit questions in through the chat. I'll be checking that periodically. So this is where we are right now. We are going through the legal idea of what you need to do. And sometimes this is what people get hung up on because you go and you become a legal nonprofit, you start, you do all the stuff that you're supposed to do, and then you can kind of think, well, I'm going to sit back and wait for those grants to roll in and wait for the money to come in, and I'll just do, that'll be easy after that. Well, it is the legal stuff is a challenge, but then there are all sorts of things you need to think about when you're creating a nonprofit that you can't forget about. You can't forget about all of these elements because if you want to run an effective nonprofit, you have to think about these in order to develop what you do. And I'll talk about each one of these in a little bit of detail, just so you know it is a good thing to be as clear as possible about all these because as you keep your organization going, you're going to have to be getting support for the organization. Maybe you charge for that, or maybe you ask for grants. Maybe you ask for individual donations. And the people that give the money to you and the people that are going to want to support you need to know certain things about your organization in order to do it. The first thing that every organization needs to be clear on is your mission. And the mission, this is a long description of it, but essentially it says what you do on a day-to-day basis. That is what a mission is. I provide after-school services to children ages 6 through 12 in Greater Cleveland. That's a mission statement. Tells me what the organization does. So when I look at the organization, and if I'm a funder, I look at your organization, I want to know if I match up with you based on what you care about and what you do every day and what I care about. So the mission is something that is part of applying to become a nonprofit. You have to be clear about your mission. And sometimes the hardest thing to set up. Because when you set up a mission for a nonprofit, that's going to be the rules of how you operate for the rest of the time that you're running this nonprofit. You want to stay within that mission, no matter what you do, no matter what your projects are, no matter what services you provide. The mission describes what you do. And if you start to think, well, oh, this is what our mission is, but we could start doing this too, and then we could start doing this other thing, that's a bad thing because funders look at your mission and they say, does everything that this organization does fit within it? And if it doesn't, that's what's called mission drift or mission creep. And it's a bad thing to be accused of because it means that you've put as a top priority not the mission of the organization, which is what your board should be set up to support and what your whole organization should be around. It goes beyond that. It drifts away and drifts toward money or drifts toward another idea. A mission is the core of what you do. It's backed by a couple other things. It's backed by a vision. And the simple way of thinking about a vision is what would the world look like if you were able to accomplish your mission, a world where no child goes hungry at night, a world where every child in third grade can read at their level. That's a vision. That's what you want to have happen because of what you do. The reason why you create a vision sometimes is to make sure that everybody who's running the organization, who reads about the organization, can understand, where are you going? What are you aiming to do? What's your outcome that you're leaning toward? Behind both the mission and the vision are the values that your organization has. And you may not even think about this because the values are so ingrained in what you've decided to do, but valuing something like all children knowing how to read, all children having access to healthcare, every senior not being abandoned, but being supported, being given education about a certain thing, whatever your values are, that's what's behind both your mission and your vision. And when we start to talk about finding funding and finding funders, really what you're trying to do is match up with people that share your values. You are looking to write to people who are going to give money because they care about what you care about. So it's important to be very, very clear when you start your organization about all three of these. And I'm not going to ask you to do an exercise right now, but you might think about that. If you are going to start a nonprofit and you're in the early stages, do you have a clear idea of what your mission is, where you're going to go? Does everybody on your board agree with the mission, the vision, and the values that you have? It's a good exercise for getting ready to go forward. Another exercise that is important before you go forward with a nonprofit is to understand the world that you're working in, the environment. And the fancy way of saying that is an environmental scan. But essentially, what that means is, do you know who else is doing work like yours around you? And I have worked with a lot of people that want to start nonprofits and have come in and talked to me. And they've described what to me sounds exactly like another nonprofit in town. I want to do this thing in this neighborhood. And I'm like, well, doesn't Boys and Girls Club do that in that neighborhood? Or isn't that provided by the CDC in that neighborhood? The important thing to understand is that there's a limited amount of funding out there. And funders, supporters, the people that are going to keep you going, don't want to support things that are duplicative of what's already happening. So it's important to know who else is doing work like yours, and maybe there's a model that they use that you can use. Maybe there's nobody doing it in your neighborhood, but there's a model that's been successful that you can adopt or add into what you do. It isn't important to always be innovative, to always be something brand new that nobody has ever done before. What is important is to see, how do you fit within what is necessary in that neighborhood? We'll talk about the need in just a second. But whatever you do, there should be a way that you fit. And when somebody says to you, well, are you just like this other organization? First of all, you should know what that other organization is. And second of all, you should know, how do you differ from that organization? How are you slightly different in what you do, or in the focus, or in the region that you serve, or how you provide the services? If you don't know what's in your organization, in your neighborhood, by the way, there are ways that you can research it. I like to work with the United Way, is often the headquarters of the 211 information line service. In Cleveland, it's called First Call for Help. And whenever you call them, they can tell you who does a particular thing in that region. And you should know about those organizations. Also, if you go to our Candid website, I'll just do it briefly here. I'm just going to stop and share the main Candid website for a second here. The main Candid website has um, on its main page a little search for nonprofits. And you can search the name of a nonprofit and say, I want to know more about this organization, and I want to search about it. And there's one called Shoes and Clothes for Kids in Cleveland that I'm just doing a search for. And you can find out about each of these nonprofits, all 1.9 million nonprofits in the United States, are listed on Candid. We ask you to register as a user, but you can get basic information on these nonprofits so you can find out more about them. Maybe you look at their website, maybe you read their mission and find out, is there anybody like us? And there are filters and other searches that you can do on Candid's website in order to find more. This used to be, by the way, if you're familiar with GuideStar, guidestar.org, um, it's been moved over to the Candid website, but you can use either of those, guidestar.org or candid.org, to find information on nonprofits. But think about calling the 211 service or reaching out to United Way or other information service in your area to find out more about the nonprofits around you. That's an environmental scan. You don't want to wait until you're done and you've started your nonprofit for people to keep saying to you, "Oh, aren't you just like X? Aren't you just like X?" You want to know who X is and what they do and how you're different from them. You do an environmental scan, you get a good concept of what your mission is and your vision. Oftentimes people think, well, now I've got to hire a staff. But when you're starting a nonprofit, oftentimes the people who do most of the work are those board members, those volunteers. You don't pay them, they donate to you. And that's the idea and ideal. But they donate their time, their talent, and their treasure to you. Those are people that you recruit to be part of your organization. It's required by law that you have a board, but that board is also people that bring their skills and bring their abilities. And a new nonprofit often has board members doing a lot of the work and nobody gets paid. One place I would recommend that you go to if you are new to thinking about your board and creating it and understanding how it works is to go to boardsource.org. That is a national nonprofit board source, and they provide lots and lots of helpful information about getting your board together and training them and the roles that they play. It's very, very good to have an idea of how to work with your board when you get started. That's something that you start with. And then as you begin to be more structured and to raise enough money, you might decide to hire a staff member or start paying you if you're the executive director. You might be paying out money for a long time before you start to get paid. But building a team of people that you need is important. And thinking about, am I going to hire full-time, part-time people? Am I going to rely on volunteers? You can be an organization like a nonprofit and rely solely on volunteers. That's what SCORE is, for example. But as you grow and you want to do things more structured, to think, what am I budgeting for, and who all do I need to do the work, and who are the people that need to be part of this? The structure of your organization is one part of understanding how a nonprofit works. The other part is to be very clear on the programs. When somebody wants to support you, they don't give you money to hire staff. And I've heard that from people that have tried to come in and start a nonprofit and they were like, I can't find any funders that want to give me money to hire staff. Well, they won't. They won't give you money just to hire staff. However, staff does specific work, and what the funders tend to want to give you money for is the need, how you're addressing the need in your community, the work that you're going to do to address that need. So it's very important when you're starting a nonprofit to define that need as clearly as possible. We are going to be working with children in Greater Cleveland, and they need to learn how to read and they need to have after school care. Well, that's great. It's wonderful that you're going to do that. Tell me more about that. Tell me the details. Who are all these children? Where do they come from? How many are there? What is their situation? Can they not get this from somewhere else? Being very clear about the need that you're going to respond to means that you understand the demographics of the area that you're working in. Maybe you get information from the Census Bureau or go to the library and get crime statistics or environmental statistics, whatever backs up the idea of the need of the community. And by the need, I mean not what you need,
but what the community needs from you. We we as community members want to graduate high school and get good jobs. That's a need that you are responding to. You're going to help the people in your community address that need. We in this community need affordable health care for people who are unable to otherwise get it. That's a need, and you can back it up with a number of things, including statistics, details of what other people have found about that need in your community. And you can back it up with anecdotal and interview and survey things related to that. Whatever you know about the community is a way to draw the picture of the need. And when you write and request funding, I keep coming back to funding because that's how we tend to think about it. Is you can't do anything, you can't keep anything going if you don't have the support that you need to do it. When you keep coming back to that, you have to be able to say very clearly, here are the people that we are going to help, and here's what they want. And it's not so much that you're telling people who they are and what they want. You don't just classify people as, inner city or undereducated or underprivileged. These are all ways to describe groups of people that are not involved in what they're doing. I'd like to know more when I talk about the need or I read about the need, about what those people want, what they've told you, you've found out from talking to them. Maybe these people, maybe some of the people that you serve are on your board of trustees, board of directors, and they're able to give you that information. But the more you can talk about that need in the community, the more likely you'll be able to then talk about what programs you are going to do that respond to that need. Part of writing any kind of fundraising, part of creating any kind of nonprofit is being very clear about understanding the need and addressing the need. And we talk about using goals and objectives when we talk about this. Broad things that you want to achieve. We want to teach everybody to read in this school district. And then objectives are specific, achievable things that you want to achieve within a particular time period. So one thing might be to recruit 50 children who are not able to read. A second objective might be to give them training 3 times a week in reading and have mentors work with them and have one-to-one sessions with the ultimate outcome, the ultimate aim to increase their reading levels by the end of that time. So when a person asks you, what do you do? And they're interested in investing in you, which is what a grant or a donation is, they want to know, well, what are you going to do? What work are you going to do? And how do you know that you're going towards that? What are you planning to achieve? In the end, how do you measure whether or not you did that? It's not enough to just think, okay, I'm going to do this program. I got 600 kids and we're going to have them come in 3 times a week. I'm going to wind up working with 600 kids over the year. That's one way of saying success, is that you had a number of people, a number of kids come to your program. But what happened to those kids? What was the change that you made in them? How do you know you're going to reach particular points, particular objectives? And what kind of change do you make in those kids after a year? That's part of program planning, is not just saying, well, here's a structure and here's the number of people that we're going to serve. That's what's called outputs. That's just simply counting things. But a funder, a donor, somebody who wants to support you needs to know not only that you had a lot of people participating, but that you did something for them, that something happened to them from your program. How do you measure that? By the way, all of these questions I'm asking here in this presentation are not meant to torture you, but these are the kind of things that you are going to be asked. And I'm going to show you at the end a couple of places on the Candid website where you can go to try and get some answers to this question, some of the ways that you can deal with some of the issues that come up with structuring a nonprofit. But let's say that you got all this all together. You've got a clear idea of your mission, vision, your structure, your board is active. You've got a good understanding of the plan for what you're going to do. You understand the location, the environment you work in. Then you start to get into, how do I raise money for this? So you have to come up with a budget, because the funder is going to want to see, particularly a foundation funder or a government funder or a corporate funder, they want to see how much is everything going to cost. And if you've never done it before, you may not have that information. But you have to come up, well, if I'm doing this program, how do I put a budget together for it? What is it going to cost? What all needs to go into it? And you have to think, while you're putting this budget together, maybe this budget is $100,000. You have to think at the same time, where am I going to get that $100,000? Most of the time, for new nonprofits, going and getting a grant from a big foundation is not the most effective way, because you haven't really done much yet. And a foundation likes to invest in things that are already going. Very few of them, there are a few, but very few of them like to give for startup kind of things. Lots of times, organizations that are starting up think about other ways of getting money. They think about crowdfunding, doing something like a GoFundMe kind of program to get some money. They think about events, having an event, generating awareness of your nonprofit and raising some money. They think about reaching out to individuals that are connected, and that means your board of directors, volunteers, people that are in the neighborhood, people that you can connect to, and asking them for donations. Individual support tends to be the number one way that a lot of organizations get started. And finally, never forget that you can charge for different services that you are providing. It doesn't have to all be donated. It can be something where, if the people that you are serving want to pay for that service and they're capable of paying for that service, then maybe that's another source. We have a whole class on fundraising planning that goes into this. It's called Introduction to Fundraising Planning. All these classes I'm mentioning, by the way, they're all free and they're all on our website. So I will show you where those are before we're done. When you're raising money, something that is not often thought about by a new nonprofit, because you don't have it to think about yet, is how are you going to manage this money? Who's going to be managing the money? Because you have to have some procedures and structure in order, because if you're going to get a grant, you have to be able to report, where did that money go? You have to keep that money separate and follow where it's going to go. And you don't want somebody to be gathering all the checks in, signing all the checks, taking them all to the bank, accounting for them and spending them without any kind of checks and balances over that. So setting up financial procedures and making sure that one person is not handling all the money is vital to this. Okay, so you get it all together, you start raising money for it, you want to get the word out to a lot of people. How do you reach your community? It isn't always enough to just say, well, we exist. Here's our website, here's a flyer, here's the door of our office. That's not enough for a lot of people to make connections to you. Some people think that the most important thing with marketing is to get the word out, to get a good social media presence, or to do that. And that does help. But another way is to think about, who can you partner with? Who already is serving the people that you serve, but doing different things for them? Can you partner with those people to get the word to them that you are there to help them out? How do you keep them informed about what you're doing? How do you change? I know lots of nonprofits that work in a particular neighborhood that are in touch with the local churches or the local hospitals or the local shops. If there is a way to make partnerships, that's a way to get free marketing for both of you at the same time. You share information about them, they share information about you. Marketing is not just, a sort of a formal send it out and wait for people to come. It's partnering with people too. It's collaboration. I'm throwing a lot at you. I still have other considerations that I'm not going to go into as much detail with, but I do want to make sure I show you some of the best things that you can think about, or places that you can go to get more information. Just some other considerations. And I do see questions coming in, and I will pause in just a little bit to address them. But some other considerations are things like space. Most times I've heard people come to me and they say, all I need is somebody to give me a building or to help us build a building. I'm like, that's unlikely as a starting point for a nonprofit. What's more likely is that you find space that you might share. It's a church basement or it's a shared office space. It's a shared space building where lots of different places are having. Are you going to get that? Can you afford it? Is it something that you can do in one place? Do you need a bigger space for certain things that you do? Do you need specific equipment? Do you need to get the materials? Could you get space or equipment donated to you? All of these things are considerations. Do you need insurance, special insurance? You working with kids, you doing something that involves transportation. There's a lot of different insurance needs that you might have. By the way, I'll mention this if you're in Ohio, the Ohio Association of Nonprofit Organizations, or OANO, OANO, has good information sometimes about what kind of insurance and some buying plans. They're a statewide membership organization for nonprofits. So I encourage you to contact them to look at their website, OANO, OANO. I believe it's oano.org. Finally, there's human resources. You have to set up policies. You have to set up structure for how you're going to hire people. As you grow, you don't want to just say, well, it's all unspoken. You have this vacation, you do this, we pay this for that. You have to write it all down and have it structured. And then finally, I mentioned this at the very beginning, there's all sorts of annual reporting that you need to do to the IRS, to the state. If you're doing fundraising and you're going to fundraise in another state, you have to register with them. If you don't file a 990, which is the basic report to the IRS every year, you can lose your nonprofit status and basically go back to start. You won't be a nonprofit anymore. And sometimes it's easy to file a very short form of that, but you have to do it. Somebody has to be responsible for it. All right. Before I get into alternatives, I'm going to just look at the questions really quickly here. Thank you for that comment. And let's see if there's a question in the Q&A. How many members are required for a board of directors, and what is the requirements of their credentials? I would say that there's very little requirement about credentials when you start a nonprofit. And people will suggest different things to you, but really what you're looking for are people that can bring a skill or a talent to you. So why are you having this person on your board? Well, they're on my board because they very much care about the same things that I do. That's great. What can they do? Do they have fundraising skills? Do they work in HR? Are they a lawyer? Are they an accountant? What is it that they can give? So those kind of things are what you look for when you recruit board members. In the state of Ohio, you can have as few as 3 board members, and one of them can be the executive director of the organization. There's different requirements in different states. I recommend that you start building it and start thinking instead about who is committed in terms of giving you time, who is able to maybe support you financially. And not everybody can do that. Certainly, if you're serving the homeless and you want a homeless person on your board, unhoused person on your board, that person may not be able to give, of course not. But think about representing the community and having somebody from your community on your board always. Boardsource.org, I've mentioned them before, is great about talking about that. And I'll show you more about board recruitment as we get into this and where you can think about that. But I do want to just talk briefly about the alternatives. If you decide this is a lot of work and maybe you're not quite ready for it, looking for volunteer work or employment with a similar organization is a great way to kind of ease into it and to see how nonprofits are working. Volunteering on a board is even more intense and related to that. The other thing that you can do if you're not ready to establish a 501c3 right off the bat is to work with another 501c3, another public charity, with what's called a fiscal sponsorship arrangement. And what that means is that there's an established nonprofit that is going to be your fiscal sponsor. They're going to handle the money for your organization because they're already established in a legal nonprofit. You partner with them and you have like a contract between you and this fiscal sponsor where you do the work, you write the grant request, the money comes to them and they give it to you. I'm making it sound very simple, but it is not very simple because you want to be very clear what is expected of them and what is expected of you. Some of fiscal sponsors, they're out there and they offer that service, but they charge for it. They charge a certain percentage of, based on how big you are. Sometimes they just have a flat fee or a certain other way that they want to operate. It's not a long-term process usually, but it's something that you can do as an individual, as a new nonprofit that isn't 501c3 registered already, as a project that maybe you don't want to do on a long-term fiscal sponsorship. A place where you can find out more about this. And I'm going to stop talking about the advantages here just for a second to go to our website. And here's a question: who can I help with to help filing the 990? My accountant says he doesn't handle nonprofits. There are quite a number of nonprofit places, nonprofit accounting firms. And there are ones that operate on a very small scale for small nonprofits. So I can't recommend one specifically. I know that there is if in different cities, there are usually groups of accounting firms that you may be able to contact, a membership group for accountants, where you can get a referral, somewhat like you would get a referral for a lawyer. I look for pro bono accountants and pro bono lawyers like that. But let me share some information and then I'll answer some questions and I'll finish up the slides. So the information I want to share, first of all, is at Candid's website. There's a section of Candid's website called Candid Learning. Candid Learning, which is linked from the Candid website, it's in over here on the resources link. Candid Learning has training materials and answers to questions. So for example, if you want to be trained in writing grant proposals or putting budgets together or working with your board, you can go into our training, all of which is free. All but one class is free. You can type in what you're interested in learning about, and you can see we have some live webinars, we have recorded webinars, we have other links to things that will help what you're doing, and you can link to them or you can attend them, register for them here. Also, that's in the training section. In the help and knowledge section, we have help articles. Help articles on just about every topic related to running a nonprofit organization. If I'm looking for an accountant, where can I find pro bono tax or legal assistant for my nonprofits? Here's an answer. Here's the place that might be able to help you out. And there's some staff recommended resources that will connect you to some low or no cost solutions. All of these kind of questions are updated here regularly by us and vetted by us so that if you're just going out of Google, sometimes you find a lot of weird stuff. Or you're just asking AI to do it. It doesn't always find the right stuff. This is really curated and the best stuff is put in there. You want to learn about measuring your impact or fundraising, there's lots of answers to questions here. If you want to think about a fiscal sponsor, if you can go into the fiscal sponsorship information here and see how you find a fiscal sponsor, what are some examples of policies that you can use to create a fiscal sponsorship agreement, that's all in here. The other section I definitely want to show you in this help and knowledge part of Candid Learning is the nonprofit startup and early stage resources. So this goes through some of the best things that you need to know right at the beginning. And it has national resources for every state in the union, and it has staff picks for more information about starting a nonprofit. I encourage you to go through all of these and find. And if you can't find what you're looking for, a couple other things you can do. One is you can ask us. We have a little chat with Candid down at the bottom corner here that you can always reach out and ask us in real time. or there's an Ask Us link where you can send in a question and we'll respond to it. This is real people that are doing this, by the way, human beings. If you feel comfortable with AI, one of the new things that we have is a candid connector to Claude. Claude is Anthropic's AI answering thing. And what we've tried to do is connect Candid to Claude, which means if you go in and search through Claude, and this is a website this is on our blog, it just tells you how it works. Just came out earlier this week. You can put in any question and it will give you answers and links to Candid's resources. So you can use our human people, you can use the AI people to connect and to find the resources that you need. And as I said at the beginning, you can reach out to me at my email address and find out about it. I have a couple of questions here I want to answer while we get to the end of the presentation. One of them is, I've already filed with the state, but at the time I use my home address. What steps do I take to get changes to a virtual business address before I file with 501c3? You have to reach out to the Secretary of State's office to do an amendment of what you've filed. And I'm not sure what the process is for that. And sometimes it changes, but I would definitely reach out to the Secretary of State's office or Attorney General's office to find out. I think it's probably the Secretary of State's office. To find out about the process for doing that kind of amending. Probably it's easier to do it before you do it on the federal level because then you get too far down the road. So I encourage you to do that. Question here, can a nonprofit accept funds before becoming a 501c3? Yes, they're not tax exempt. They're not tax deductible funds. If you are not a 501c3 or public charity, you cannot claim. If I donate money to you, I can't claim that on my tax return. Now, people can give to anybody they want, and people can take money from anybody they want as income. But if you're a
Dave,
nonprofit, yes, question.
could I interrupt for just a minute?
Yes, please.
Actually, the ability to use a tax deduction is retroactive to the
Yes,
day.
I was going to get to that. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it is. One thing about starting a nonprofit is that as you go through the process of getting a 501c3 and you're waiting, that money will be, if you get a donation in that time and then you get your 501c3 tax exempt status, it will be retroactive to when you applied for that status. So that's a good thing to know about. But yes, if you decide not to go through it and do it, you can get the donations, but unless you become a 501c3, you would not get it. And SCORE is really good at helping with these kind of things and making sure these questions get answered. Ariel is asking, do you know of any nonprofits that started as for-profit businesses? Do you have any resources specific to that kind of transition? It's tricky. I would never recommend it. I would want to work with a lawyer that understands the structure of business because basically there are two different kinds of business setups. And I would want to make sure that if you are transitioning from a for-profit to a nonprofit, that it's very clear where that money goes. And there are some nonprofits that have a for-profit arm, for example, and that's a very complicated thing. The IRS wants you to keep for-profit money and nonprofit money quite separate. So I would encourage you to work with a lawyer. But I know lots of different nonprofits that have had a for-profit arm or they've transitioned from one to the other. It's a major change. What's my email? I can put that in the chat. Or actually, I can't put that in the chat. For some reason, I can't write to the chat. It's david.holmes, david.holmes @candid.org. All right. I think I got all the questions answered here. I'm going to go back and finish off the slides and see if there's anything else that anybody has, but let me share this. Here's the slide that I was on. The advantages of being a nonprofit are tax exemption for people that donate to you. You can get private grants. You won't be able to get grants until you become a 501c3. And as I said, and as Anita mentioned, it is retroactive to when you started that process. And you have a formal structure. So as a nonprofit, you have limited liability. It's set up so that the organization takes on the debt and the organization could go bankrupt. But you personally, as a participant, are protected because the liability is with the organization. As long as you do your work well, there's a number of caveats to that. As long as you do the work as it's supposed to be done, you have limited liability. The disadvantages are it costs money to even start it, costs money to get it going, costs money to do the programs at first, costs money to register with the IRS. It has a lot of paperwork and it has shared control. People will tell me sometimes I don't want to have a board of directors because then they can decide, the two other people on the board can decide what to do without me and they can make the decisions. And yep, that's exactly how it works. Your organization is not run by you, it's run by your board, and they can hire and fire you if you're an executive director. So that's something that you have to consider as part of setting up. Also, all of this is public. It's filed with the IRS. It's filed on the national level. If somebody wants to read your 990 and find out how much money your highest paid people made and find out about your finances, it's perfectly open to them, and you're open to scrutiny by the public. Which should you do? I encourage you to use our resources. Learning.candid.org, the nonprofit resources page, is what I showed you with all of the different startup information. Just going to the learning.candid.org section of the website will give you lots and lots of free information that can help you out. And this is my email address again, david.holmes@candid.org, if you want to reach out and ask questions. See if there's any thank you, Score, for posting that in the chat as well. Can a relative or my husband be on the board? Yes, your relative or your husband can be on the board. However, as you become more and more established, it starts to look weird if all of the people on your board have the same last name, or all related to you, or all friends of yours, because that's not really what a board is about. Certainly, private foundations have boards where all the people on the board are related to one another. That's fine. But that's a private foundation giving money away. When you start to get money, it seems very insular. It seems very much like you're not trying to represent your community very well by just having the people you know or people you're related to on the board. So it's a bad sign. Best advice for anyone thinking of starting up a nonprofit organization. My best advice is to talk to a number of people before you go through the process. Talk to a lawyer, talk to SCORE. Talk to somebody who's been a nonprofit. Reach out to somebody that you really respect and say, how is this? And make sure that you know where you fit. It's a very difficult time right now for fundraising because of some of the limitations from the federal government. Everybody, that kind of has a ripple effect through giving. But if you're doing something that nobody else is doing and you get lots of support and people say, this is a great idea, then I would move forward. But get that feedback from people. If you're a nonprofit and hosting an event, can you get a temporary liquor license? I am not a lawyer, so I don't know what the law is related to that. I do know that nonprofits do have, you are able to get certain permissions, but I would not want to answer that question. So I'm just going to let that go, and I would talk to another nonprofit that has done it and find out about that, or check with the IRS. Do I offer one-on-one conversation and advice for your nonprofit? Sure, set up a time to meet with me. I don't, as again, I'm not an accountant or a lawyer, but I can certainly talk to you, help you with fundraising, help you answer questions. And I think we're pretty much right at time. Do we have any final comments? I'm going to stop sharing just for a second here.
I think we're in pretty good shape.
All right, great. Well, thank you all for joining.
And
Monica
thank you,
has,
David. It's been a wonderful session, and certainly the kind of information that people need before they actually dive in. So,
well, I wish you all luck and good luck to everybody, and I hope you have a good